big topic number 2, getting clients. So when you guys first hung out your shingle, did you do a big firm announcement? What did you guys do?
You know, I come from an era where in the mid-90s when I started, people were still getting the law journal of their particular jurisdiction every day, and there'd be these huge, big, full-page announcements. Such and such big law firm or even small law firm is proud to announce that Daniel and Cari have joined us and blah, blah, blah. I kind of saw that then, even maybe as being a little archaic or a little outdated. The best way to announce it, I think, is to just remember, day one doesn't have to be the grand opening of the big department store or the big website. After all, we're starting lean, as we all keep kind of saying. So there doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, need to be this gigantic announcement. You can build a staircase style, and you can work your way up.
I didn't make any announcements, really. I told professors at my law school, in your third year you take these courses like the real estate contracts, right? And a lot of these guys are adjuncts, and so they practice. And that's led to, I mean, for the past 10 years, one professor who was at New York Law School and I have worked on 20, 30 cases, right? And the way it started was, I said, hey man, listen, I just graduated, passed the bar, now licensed. If you have any per diems you want me to go on, I'm happy to do it. I don't care. Awesome. 5 didn't respond, 1 did. I told people that I thought were going to be able to send me something, other lawyers that I knew, and I literally said, I will do any grunt work you want me to do. I just want my foot in the door. And I think that, sometimes law students that I meet these days, they don't do that. They'll come in and they'll immediately say, oh, I don't know what to do, or I'm announcing it here, I'm announcing it there. You have to be able to tell people what you can do for them, and that you'll put in the work no matter what it is to actually get expertise and experience. There's one kid that I love mentoring some people, but one recent graduate came to me and he said, I want to open up my own shop. He'd worked for a couple of years at a firm, and you could tell whether or not someone has the guts to kind of do it, because it's so scary. I mean, you guys know. And I had a sort of feeling that he would. And you know what? He did. And he's doing every single type of law. He's not discriminating based on the type of law itself. He's going out there. He's going to every networking event he possibly can just to see what works. So, in terms of announcements, I wouldn't so much do an announcement, but I would be everywhere all the time. You should not be home before 8, 9 p.m. when you're first starting your law practice. You should be out every single place you possibly can, meeting anyone you can.
Yeah, so I did a big announcement on Facebook. I have a lot of different Facebook friends, and with a link to my new website that I had after having only one client. And so that was my big announcement. I don't remember sending an email necessarily to family and friends, but I know that that's worked for a lot of people. But from the very beginning, I got clients basically from folks that I knew, or they either needed me or they knew somebody that needed me, right? So I did a social media announcement as well. So when you guys first started, what did you find was your most effective way to get those initial clients?
Authenticity is a word I used earlier, and that's just a synonym, I believe, for honesty. Having a reputation for being honest is the most valued thing that I believe an attorney can have, and that holds true when you have ethnic communities, which I have obviously as an immigration attorney. If word gets out in a particular community, whether it's an Eastern European, West African, Central American, and so forth, word is out that this lawyer is honest, as on some level sad this is to say, but the public perception of attorneys, as we know, is very low at times, and we are considered, along with politicians and car salesmen, I've looked into, so I've talked on it before, as the 3 least trustworthy areas that the public generally perceives for many decades. Being honest, which I would do anyway, and I'm sure you guys would as well, carries so much cachet that they are proud to go back to their community, to their house of worship, to their community organization, wherever they all gather and say, hey, guess what? I found someone. You should all go there too, because this guy tells people the truth, and if he can't help you, he won't charge you a fee past his consultation.
Yeah, I mean, what I did to obtain clients 10 years ago versus now is different. If you're going out now, I would look at who is a conduit to getting a client, right? So you can look at clients directly as a direct channel, or you can look at indirect channels. So for instance, let's say you were doing bankruptcy, you'd want financial advisors, as odd as it is, and you'd want accountants. If you're doing real estate, you'd want mortgage brokers, you'd want real estate brokers. Then, beyond that, you figure out who's not being serviced, right? So there's networking events, and the same people seem to sort of go to each other. Go to the person that's not being spoken to at a certain point. Reach out to someone that doesn't have strong business relationships with other people or isn't working with other people. Reach out to people that don't like the way things are typically done. Let's say outliers in one way or another, and say,
Sure.
This is the way I do things. Create your own channel that way, right? I keep saying this, don't fight against the ocean, just go with the tide, right? So for real estate, there's I think it's a bajillion real estate brokers in New York. There's just a ton of them. I can't possibly compete with most of the firms that are out there. They're big. They have ingrained relationships. Done. I used to have to go to these events and say, well, we can do this way, we can do it that way. I stopped. I go to brokers that are in boutique shops, right, where there's 10 or 15 real estate brokers as opposed to a Corcoran or an Element or anything else, and it served me well. So go outside, look outside the box. I know it's a cliche thing to say, but figure out where you think your clients would come from anyway and speak to those people indirectly.
Yeah. When I first started, I have no shame to admit this, I actually posted an ad on Craigslist. So that's how I got one of my first clients, was from Craigslist. But now...
were they normal?
No comment.
Okay.
All right. So, but now, I get a lot of my clients through other attorneys.
Yeah.
And people that I have known and had long-term relationships with for quite some time. A couple years ago, I actually did a survey to farmers, agribusiness people, and food entrepreneurs, and I asked them, how did you find your lawyer? And about 80% of them said that I either use a lawyer that I know or they were referred by somebody that I know. And I think that really comes down to it for whatever kind of law that you're practicing, right? So you want to meet those people or meet the people that know those people, right? Through networking, and that has been really effective for me. And I have a few other notes on this in my outline on pages 10 and 11. All right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about networking. How important has it been to the two of yours law practice? And are you involved in any networking groups?
Well, we talk about two different areas in my mind. First are bar associations, and then is everything else. I've served as the section chair in New Jersey State Bar Association on immigration almost a decade ago now, and served in a similar capacity for a committee in the New York State Bar Association, and also served on a national committee for the American Immigration Lawyers Association. That's networking within the bar. Daniel just referenced networking outside of the bar with people in his industry, and that's the second type. I think both of them are excellent. It's just a matter of maybe the one warning I give people is don't take on too much. Don't say yes to everything. Because there are some attorneys I know who are running around, and I call this in a book I wrote, solo practitioneritis, where you're trying to be in 15 places at once. See clients in the office, answer their calls, answer their emails, make court appearances if that's part of your practice, and on top of it, then be at all of these events. Today's event happened to coincide with another event that I was invited to speak at, and quite frankly, on some weird level, I guess that appealed to my ego. Wow, they wanted me to speak in two places on the same day, but on another level, it reminded me, know when is enough, because sometimes people get so wrapped up in networking that they forget the goal. If you're constantly networking, but you're not getting return on the investment of your time, which is, again, our most valuable asset as attorneys, then the networking can almost be counterproductive.
So you mentioned your book. Tell us about it.
Okay, real briefly, shameless plug. 3 Degrees of Law, www.3degreesoflaw.com. Came out a year ago. It was basically one of those deals where people say, I should really write a book. Well, I did finally, and it's called Unlocking, or I should say the subtitle of it is Unlocking the Secrets to Happiness in the Legal Universe. I just got so sick of hearing attorneys and even law student interns I had in my practice telling me how miserable they were. So I just started interviewing people and asking them questions and taking client stories and just coupling them all together, and then eventually something came out of it. And I know you've written a couple of books as well.
Yeah, and I have a link to that book in the resources outline. Any comments on networking?
Yeah, I have no books.
You're the only one.
Yeah, it's fine. So I'll have dinner or a drink with someone I know. I think your point is perfect. Last year, probably, or a year and a half ago, burned myself out doing this. So I would work like crazy, and then at 6 o'clock, I would go out. Let me just tell you something. And I don't know if you guys feel the same. Nothing good happens after 8 p.m. networking. Nothing good, right? You have the third whiskey or whatever it is, someone starts, complaining about their spouse or where they live. You never work with that person ever, and they typically leave you with a tab. It's a horrible existence. So I stopped completely. I know there's breakfast groups. I'm sure we're going to touch upon that a little bit. I did that, and I just felt very, and again, it's, people do it and they have great success with it. I felt very robotic doing it. Mm-hmm. I think the key to selling is not selling. And I think that sometimes when you go to these networking events, you're almost immediately placed in this kind of like ring where you kind of have to say, I sell, I sell, I sell. And it's a very, very, it's weird. Mm-hmm. And there's no authenticity, as you mentioned. My best referrals are from people that I got to know. So if it's anything from, and I kid you not, someone at the gym, or someone that I know from a CLE or a class that I took or something along those lines, and we get to know each other, that's the best sort of thing, because they know Danny, right? They don't know Daniel Gershburg, who's trying to, be the best real estate attorney in New York and saying why he's different. All that's total BS, and people can see through that. So, I don't know if it's to my benefit or to my detriment. I don't really network anymore. Mm-hmm. I think if you're starting out, you definitely do. But don't do it just because you think you have to do it, or places where other people do it. Figure out what you like, because if you love yoga, you're going to meet people in the yoga class, and that's kind of networking if you go out to tea with them afterwards, right? Or doing any of those things. Lawyers don't look to that enough, and they probably should, because those avenues will allow you to connect with people more, and then they trust you to give you thousands of dollars.
So my relationship with networking has kind of had some ebbs and flows through the last 7 years. I'm meeting my 7-year anniversary for my law practice this summer, and the last 4 years I've been involved with BNI, which is Business Networking International. I hold the matrimonial lawyer and also the agricultural lawyer seat. There wasn't a lot of competition for that in New York City. But I'm actually in an evening chapter, not a morning chapter, because I've discovered I am not a 7 a.m. networking girl. So BNI has been great for me for getting referrals on the family matrimonial side of my practice. I mean, if you're a tax lawyer, from what I've heard, tax law is hard to get business from BNI. And I say that because BNI could be great depending on your practice area. It could be great for real estate attorneys or immigration lawyers, or not so great for other types of practice areas. And I think networking is nice, but you need to find a group that works for you. We have another question that popped up on the screen. It says, at what point does a solo practitioner starting up need professional liability insurance? Darren, we're going to talk about that in just a second. I'm going to hold off on that question here and conclude with networking. So back to networking. Do you guys have any tips at all?
Other than the beautiful pieces of golden information I just gave? No. And the rest on that? No, I think that's really it. Yeah.
I find a lot of attorneys are not comfortable in certain situations and certain environments. You just touched on yoga. I used to do a lot of martial arts before I got old and broken down. I mean, there are places where you're comfortable, and if you're not comfortable, don't force yourself to go to some networking event because you feel obligated to go. Go somewhere where you're comfortable, and you may be thinking, well, how am I going to get a client out of this? Don't go into it thinking that way. Just go in there. You said you're not Daniel Gershburg. At that point, you're Danny. People call me Harlan, not Harlan York. I don't care. Whatever. As long as I'm comfortable in the environment and a topic happens to come up, hey, what do you do? It might just come up that ordinarily, like the next question after, hey, some stretch of weather we're getting. And you know what? It's all about, in my mind, the authenticity is a word I'm probably beating into the ground today, but I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. Be yourself. And if your personality, if you're sitting out there watching this right now, doesn't fit with a lot of the things we might be using as examples, fine. Modify it to your personality and what works for you.
So there's a really great book that I read called Never Eat Alone. And I really like that book because it talks about how just networking can be implemented into your life, like whatever it is. If you like yoga, maybe meet somebody else who likes yoga and do yoga, right? And that's your networking. I used to do yoga with a real estate broker. And for me, I like to go for lunch, and the way I look at it, I really like to try to take a time out of my day, the middle of the day anyway, for stress management. And so I might as well have some company while I'm there, and I really try not to sell myself, just trying to have a conversation and getting to know that person. Some tips that I do have for young lawyers out there, people who are just getting started, when you're having networking lunches or coffee or happy hour drinks with somebody with more experience, don't forget that you have something to give as well. Oftentimes I feel like the conversations can be one-sided with younger lawyers who are just looking for information, but perhaps an accountant that would be a good introduction. I mean, you have something to give maybe in terms of social capital or experience as well. And we'll go ahead and go to Darren, to your question. So Darren asks, about what point do you need malpractice insurance if there are no clients and a new solopreneur is working on marketing and a website? Is there a need for malpractice insurance? Do you guys have thoughts there?
I would get malpractice insurance. I personally just think you'd be silly not to, and I don't want to insult anyone who's not carrying it, but I just feel like, and maybe I'm in an area where we can get, practically speaking, reasonably priced malpractice insurance. Maybe the stakes are higher if you're in an area of law, let's say med mal or something, ironically, malpractice lawyer needing malpractice insurance, right? But I mean, it's probably somewhat geared towards what work you do, but for me, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you should get malpractice insurance immediately if you're practicing law, because for the same reason, I'm just a big believer in all types of insurance. Not to get all gloomy-doomy, but 15 years ago, when the towers fell, I came home and I said to my wife, we had small children at the time, God forbid I don't come home one day, God forbid, I want to make sure we're taken care of, and I took a much larger life insurance policy out. So I'm just somebody who thinks like that, and I think mostly as professionals who want to protect the rights and liabilities of our clients, certainly we have to think about our own rights and our own liabilities.
Yeah, Darren, get some insurance, man.
Put simply.
No, I mean, yes, you should get it, because what are you going to, I mean, if a client, you don't have clients now, but if a client comes in on, next Tuesday, surprisingly, and Monday you didn't have liability insurance, you're going to say, well, hold on a second, I got to call my broker. Just get it. It's super cheap when you first start in the first place.
Exactly.
I'll give you the name of a guy. You can tweet me.
Yeah, it is cheap from the onset, and you can get really, low limits to keep it and then increase it later on. But I totally agree. I mean, you don't have a client now, but next week somebody could call you, and it takes a couple of days to get the paperwork going as well. You got to send them money.
They don't want it.
And with that being said, Darren, I also got insurance from the very onset. In fact, I didn't want to do anything for any client until I had malpractice insurance. I know that everybody doesn't feel that way. All right, some other questions here on getting clients. What other types of marketing do you guys do? We've already talked about social media, but what else do you guys do in terms of marketing?
I don't do much. I'd like to start doing a lot of sponsorship things. So if it's Little League or if it's a particular business in the area, just because I want to do those things. Frankly, and I don't know if this is really classified as marketing, but there's a title insurance company that I know that donates 13% of their premium to charity. And I don't know why 13% comes in, but the guy's great, and I'm thinking of doing the same thing. Not 13% because that's insane, but a smaller percentage that would still let me pay the rent and the employees. I really do want to do that and essentially allow the clients to pick one of the 3 charities that we actually have found that are really, really good and transparent. Is it marketing? No, but can we convey a specific message that we do things differently and we value certain things? Sure. That's not to say that if you don't do that, you're a horrible person, but it's better for me to do something like that and stand out in that way than do traditional marketing, because that hasn't necessarily done that much for us, really.
What about you?
May sound like common sense, but win cases. If you get a reputation as being successful in your area and word gets out through whatever means that word gets out, and today word gets out much more across the board with the internet than ever before on a daily basis change, we're talking about that reputation of being a successful provider of services, winning cases, and again, being super responsive. That's in and of itself a great way to market your practice. Having a reputation of being somebody or a firm that is super responsive to their clients. I talk a lot about a 24-hour rule in my writing and in my lecturing, that you try to get back to people within 24 hours. So through osmosis, that's good marketing.
That's the best marketing.
Yeah, being a great lawyer.
Yeah.
So Harlan mentioned books previously. So I have 2 self-published books, and I wrote both of them with CreateSpace. So the books are sold on Amazon and Kindle, and now on iBooks. And I didn't do it to make money. I did it from a branding standpoint. So that's one method that has helped me. My first book was on New York food and agriculture law. My second book that recently came out was on New York family and matrimonial law. And then I also do a lot of speaking engagements as well, and I write articles specifically on the food and the ag side of my practice. I write articles that the cowboys are reading, right? They're in the livestock, cattle publications. They're in like the Farm Bureau, So I'm not trying to write necessarily to other lawyers. I'm really trying to write for the publications that potential clients are reading as well. So those are some things that have worked for me.
Your point is great, by the way. Can I just hone in on that, by the way, just doing amazing work, because you'll find a couple of years in, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I'm sure per your point you probably do, that at a certain point, those clients that you have now will refer other clients over and over, and that's the best avenue. So the best way to market is to do great work. And again, I'm sorry if it sounds cliche, but it's totally right. I thought years ago that I was like, all right, I get it, man, do great stuff, but where do I put up LinkedIn? But realistically, it's doing the work and doing it really well and becoming a craftsman at sort of what you do, and having clients that love you and refer you out other cases. I think you honed in on a fantastic point.
Yeah, as a final thought on that, with our practice with 5 attorneys with 5 distinct personalities exclusively practicing immigration law, one thing we all have in common in my firm is, as corny as this sounds, we actually care about our clients and we want to help them. And when I got a phone call from time to appear on national television in English or in Spanish, it's a wonderful feeling on some level. I can call my mom up and say, Mom, I'm going to be on TV. Nobody's calling me the next day in certain cases to say, hey, I saw you on TV, now I want to hire you as an attorney. But at the other end of the spectrum, winning cases, again, and helping people is, to my mind, past what we've already discussed, the real true mark, I think, of how to gain more clients.
What about paid advertising? Do you guys pay for advertising anywhere?
No.
Limited. I've experimented with everything, as I've said earlier, 2 decades in. I've tried everything. I tried pay-per-click long before pay-per-click was something that was on Google, because Google wasn't even the #1 search engine. That's how long ago I tried it. It was when Yahoo was still
totally aging
powered. I know, I'm 46 years old, right? So I was trying something called Overture pay-per-click through Yahoo, which was powered by Google. I tried it for a while. I fooled around with it. Look, again, like I said earlier, don't be afraid to fail. If it works for you, for some people, paid advertising, pay-per-click, that's great. If it works for you, try it. But also, don't be afraid to ask people who mentor who may have tried it already.
Also, don't go on TV and talk about things you don't know.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's more and more attorneys that are doing this, and I know a few attorneys that are doing this that are entertainment lawyers and discussing criminal law,
Yeah.
and that are criminal attorneys and discussing entertainment law,
Yeah.
because they think that they're going to get in front of a critical mass and their name's going to be known. It leads to nothing but trouble.
That's
right. It doesn't make sense. You don't need 500 people in your office. You just need 5 people that are going to sign up and actually respect you. That's it, right?
And they'll tell 5 friends and so
Yep.
on and so on.
Yep.
So I've done a little bit of paid advertising with agriculture publications, but nothing that I can directly say I got a client from. And I'll to be honest with you, I kind of quit doing that now. But that being said, I mean, it's also a public relations thing too. So if I have a relationship with a certain farm family or a breed association, I might have paid advertisement more to just support that farm or that breed association, not so much for advertising per se. All right, let's go ahead and move on to taking care of clients. So, did the 2 of you get any mentors at the very beginning of your law practice?
I started out a long time ago, it seems, as an associate with an older practitioner, and at that time, that individual mentored me, and that was then, and there's been various iterations of the practice since then. But I also was able to reach out to my greatest mentor of all when he was still alive, which was my father, who was a New York City gym teacher, who you could probably walk to the high school where he taught phys ed for 32 years from the studio, and he is was my mentor. He's gone over a decade, unfortunately. But I must tell 10 to 12 stories in my book about things my dad told me, real life stuff. The things that sometimes are so ingrained in you that you forget about them when you're carrying your briefcase or wearing your suit. But you go back to what whoever in your earlier formulative years told you makes sense. Being streetwise, I talk a lot about this. Understanding the dynamics of how the client-lawyer relationship works, starting out forgetting for the minute that we're wearing our lawyer uniform and they're wearing their client suit or whatever it is. Just understanding the relationship, all right? So the mentoring can come from past the lawyer and or an individual like a parent or whoever else.
Yeah, just to conclude on this point, because I know we have to wrap this up, I've had mentors since day one. I think it's probably one of the most critical things that you need as an attorney. My mentors have changed throughout. And one small sort of pro tip, send them things. Send them a bottle of scotch at the end of the year. Make them understand that the advice that they're giving you is vital and that you appreciate it tremendously. It's, if nothing else, I mean, literally get mentors, because that'll shape your practice. Yeah.